Sushma, I made you the co-host. You can accept people. Yeah. So thank you again for joining in from different parts of the world. Thank you so much. As Sushma mentioned, if you're free to put in your chat box from where you're joining, India, UAE, whichever part of the world you're joining in with your name. Thanks so much again for joining for the 46th webinar of NLG, the Networking and Learning Group. And we have a fantastic speaker. We have a fantastic subject today. Our subject today is navigating a VUCA world, and we will know about in detail about what is a VUCA world from the master himself, from Dr. Cecil Clemens. Before going into the session, a small intro as always for the new participants about NLG. And we thank you for your registration with us. Thank you again for joining in for the 46th webinar. As always, these two faces appear on the screen, and we are the co-founders of the Networking and Learning Group. Myself, my name is Jason Abraham, and you have on your screen the right side Sushma Prijubablani. Sushma is an HR expert. If you need anything from related to HR, job seeking strategies, networking about job search, interview preparations, you can really approach to Sushma directly on a WhatsApp number or LinkedIn. She's available on LinkedIn, or she can be approached at her WhatsApp number, which I'll be sharing at the end of the session too. So Sushma Prijubablani is an HR professional, and she's an NLP master practitioner, and she's all about human emotions, touch, and she's having a decision to create impact and positive difference in people by unleashing the true potential in them. And I think she's pretty successful in that also. Thank you for Sushma being a backbone of NLG, the group. And myself, my name is Jason Abraham, and I'm also assisting Sushma with the content creation in NLG. And myself, I'm a networking expert, but I don't consider as an expert. I'm still learning. And all I create about value content, I create content about value creation, and I'm on a mission to connect with 100,000 souls, which I would be completing it within 2021. I like to speak to people in stories. So that's all about me and the co-founders of NLG. So going ahead, we have two more pillars for NLG. As always, these two pillars are there behind us. And whatever you see on the screen, behind the screen, there is a lot of decisions. There is a lot of preparations going on. Mr. Thakyuddin Teparambil and Anil Kunuku. Thakyuddin is a QHSC professional and entrepreneur enthusiast. He has recently opened a business also. He's an MBA in HR and MSc in biotechnology. Mr. Anil Kunuku, he's again an NLP master practitioner, coach and a mentor. He's a Toastmaster, and he's an HR professional as well. And these two guys are helping us from the back to create contents as usual. So what is the Networking and Learning Group? As always, we try to network and learn and share our knowledge with all. And these are the three main intentions why we are here: to network, to learn, and to share knowledge. And as discussed before, these are the two pillars for NLG League and NLG Career. As NLG League is purely focused on creating and sharing content and educating people, and which we would be soon publishing in our official platforms. And NLG Career is all about sharing job opportunities, job vacancies. But again, we stress on the fact that we are not a recruitment agency, or we are not associated with any recruitment agencies. But there are some recruiters, there are people who are helping us from the back end to recruit and to share content. So we will be sharing forwarded messages, and the authentication has to be done by the job seekers themselves. You can connect with us through different modes of communication: Facebook, WhatsApp, Telegram, LinkedIn. And we will be opening our official website soon so that you can connect with them, with us officially there also. There are some ground rules to follow. Always mute your audio, because the speaker should not be disturbed while there is a presentation. And you can use your chat box, and for any comments or anything specific you want to speak to us or the speaker. You may raise your hand to ask any questions, and the questions will be addressed at the end of the session. You may take screenshots or notes as per this session progresses. So thank you again for joining. And before concluding my speech, these are some posters which we had which were published before, and we had conducted some previous webinars, and these are our speakers. Some speakers you know already, and we are almost into the 46th webinar. Yes, and today's speaker is Dr. Cecil Clements, a highly knowledgeable person. He's a doctorate from US in Leadership and Management Excellence. He's an author. He's a president of PLACE, the Program for Leadership Advancement and Continuing Education, and founder and author of Corporate Capsules, founder and lead pastor of the church at Powai, adjunct faculty with Asbury Theological Seminary, and a spiritual expert. You will be knowing more about Dr. Cecil Clements in the coming session. Now the session is going to officially start, and we'll be soon starting the session. Dr. Cecil Clements, the platform is all yours. Thank you for joining.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Sushma. It's a joy to be here, and I really need to thank Susan for connecting us. And it's delighted to be present here with you all, and thank you for the opportunity. Well, without any further ado, we'll get into our topic for today. Let me just share my screen. Is that clear to everybody? Also,
yes.
Okay. All right. So, navigating a VUCA world. Well, when you look at the word VUCA, I think the first thing when you read it is to reach for your computer or your phone or ask the question, what is VUCA, right? And many of our helpers on Google will tell you what it is. And so I know that all of you have come armed with the knowledge of what VUCA is. But the reason I want to talk about how you navigate a VUCA world is because when all of these components come together, it creates for a lot of disruption in our lives. And while it is easy to handle one disruption at a time, it's difficult to handle four. But I'm probably getting ahead of myself. Where did VUCA come from? Well, it's really not a new word. It hasn't been coined in the recently. It's been around for almost 34 years. 1987 was when Warren Bennis and Bert Nanas brought out this term in their leadership studies. And then post that, the US Army picked it up at the end of the Cold War when the Soviet Union was kind of falling apart, and talked about the VUCA possibilities at that time. And then, of course, terrorism added a new dimension to it, because war then became a very different aspect. It was no longer two countries coming against each other ideologically or whatever, or the face to an enemy, but terrorism brought a new dimension that brought all these components of VUCA together. And then corporates then began to take this on as they realized that the very same qualities that were found in VUCA was present even in their businesses as they conducted their work globally. So what is VUCA? Well, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. Volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And when you look at these four areas, just without even trying to find a definition for them, they can create a certain amount of angst in one, isn't it? Because these are not words that bring any kind of peace or solace. They're words that kind of make you stop and say, wait a minute, what's going on here? What is this unexpected thing that's around the corner? Well, when we look at volatile, basically, situations that change very rapidly, that makes things very unpredictable, especially going from bad to worse. And here's the thing, the more volatile it is, faster is the change. So as volatility increases, then change gets at a faster pace that doesn't allow you to make the kind of changes that you would want to cope with the change. For example, when you look at volatility, China's slowdown in growth affected financial markets. So one country's problems created a slew of things for other markets. The Brexit vote had the same kind of effect as well. And then terrorist attacks have added to the volatility of the situation. Corporations and individuals have had to navigate through these volatile conditions. So more interconnected on a global scale than ever, but with that interconnection comes more volatility. Well, if we were to look at uncertain, and I just want to quickly go through these definitions because that's not where I want to land, but want to move on to navigating through these things. Uncertain, not able to be relied upon, not clearly known or definitive, not sure, not completely confident of something, and more uncertain, the harder to predict. I remember in another talk that I do on excellence, I talk about Joel Arthur Barker. Joel Arthur Barker is a futurist, and he would look at the conditions that were prevalent and then predict what would happen 10, 15 years down the road, looking at social movements, looking at new inventions, looking at businesses, looking at corporations, looking at startups. All of this helped him to predict where we were headed. Today, with this kind of uncertainty, that is no longer available to us. Prediction is getting harder and harder. Complex, consisting of, well, let me back up a little, give you an example of uncertainty. What creates uncertainty would be startups. We know that today startups are mushrooming all across the world, and they create a lot of turmoil for established businesses. Let's just take the taxi industry. With the advent of Uber, it's turned them upside down, right? Let's take the hospitality industry. With the advent of Airbnb, again, the same thing. With travel and tourism, private aggregators and apps that have come along, don't make it an exclusive domain anymore. So much of uncertainty involved. Moving on to complex, consisting of many parts, right? As you can see, the graphic is just a maze, linked in a very complicated manner. And the bottom line, the more complex it is, the harder it is to analyze. And analysis is huge today, isn't it? With all the amount of data that is available, analysis is what makes sense of data. And yet with the complexities that are now available, what would be examples of those complexities? Well, businesses now operate internationally, isn't it? And they work with so many complexities, different cultures, different languages, timings are different, ethical and moral standards are different. Take an ad campaign that is cleared in the US. At the most, it will be done in English, or if you want to add another language, maybe Spanish. But you cannot take that same ad campaign and bring it to India. It won't work because we have maybe 28 languages in which this particular ad needs to be done within the culture of maybe 28 states. So the complexities are huge. And then finally, ambiguous, open to more than one interpretation, not having one obvious meaning. Okay, so there are multiple meanings. You can get something said and then interpret it differently, and all of them would make sense. And so it's become a huge gray area in what is the way to operate and what is not the way to operate. Two and two no longer just make four, but kind of there's an exponential aspect to it that is creating the ambiguity. So the more ambiguous, the harder to interpret. And basically, ambiguity has to do with facing the unknown, isn't it? One scenario can have more than one interpretation. What happens when that occurs is that decision making then becomes very difficult. And people who need to make decisions freeze, become immobile. It's harder because you really don't know what to do. And then ultimately you just say, okay, I'm going to jump in, take a chance, and hope this works out. So this is our VUCA world. You may wonder whether ambiguity and uncertainty are the same, and they are not, right? Ambiguity is open to multiple interpretations. You get many ways in which you can deal with one particular issue. Uncertainty is just not being sure of one thing. Just not being sure of one thing. Okay? So now this is our VUCA world. And this was a world that was here many years back. And corporations are all grappling with it, trying to see how in a volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous world they can do business. But now into this VUCA world, COVID enters, isn't it? And now you can imagine what's going to happen or what has happened. We just look back over the last 1 year and think, my goodness, if we thought the previous 10 years was a VUCA world, we'll have to find another word for what has happened to us in the last year. COVID-19, I don't know. Somebody once said, hey, why is the name COVID? And I just thought I'd put it out there. Co for corona, VI for virus, D for disease, and 19, the year that it came. So COVID-19. But look at what COVID-19 has done to stocks and stock markets, unemployment, recession in most countries. Travel has been hit. Hospitality industry hit. Tourism. Nobody is going anywhere to see any exotic places anymore. Education has been hit. We think, no, not really. We've got education under control. Most people are now learning using online devices that help them in learning. But that's okay in cities. What about rural areas? We have a school that caters to tribal children. We have about 280 children in that school. Now, when COVID came, the school was told to stop in-person gathering. So we stopped it. Then we were instructed to now start online. But in these places, there's hardly any internet connectivity. The bandwidth is so little, you can't download anything. Beyond that, the children don't have devices. And so for 1 year, there has been no teaching because you can't congregate, nor can you learn on the online platforms. And education has taken a hit. And this is all over the world. We only think about education and think, oh yeah, it's going along fine. Now we can get online. We have devices. But there are millions and millions of people for whom this is stagnant in the last year. And then families. We think, wait a minute, families are okay. No. Abuse has gone up in families. Do you know that the statistics for abuse has gone up tremendously? Spousal abuse, child abuse. People are getting frayed. There are fights in families. Relationships are coming apart because what was before was that everybody had their kind of time within the home, isn't it? Children knew they came back from school and they had X amount of time by themselves to play or whatever. Parents knew that if they were at home, this is what had to be done. If they would work, when they came home, they had this amount of time. Today, that time is complete, 24 hours. And everybody is scrambling, trying to say, how do I get my own time, me time, in the midst of us time? And this has caused so much of disruption, even in families. So now the question, if we take this kind of volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous situation and drop it in the midst of where you and I are, my friends, and we acknowledge that it has taken its toll on us, then the question is, okay, how do I then navigate? How do I navigate this VUCA world with a certain degree of harmony, well-being, and equanimity? Because that's what we need, isn't it? We need harmony and well-being and equanimity in our homes to be able to do what we need to do jointly, separately, so that each one in the family system can grow, and not that we become like crabs that pull each other down because of this situation that we find ourselves in. Within this situation, we still need to grow. You put down the spiritual expert. I'm not an expert on spirituality. I pastor a church, but the thing is, when I look at the situation that we are in, I am reminded that we are here because God placed us here. And God is in his infinite knowledge knew that there would be a time of COVID at this time in 2019, 2020. And yet he placed you and me here. And if God did, then his purposes, my friends, for you and for me, still need to be fulfilled within a VUCA world. Within a VUCA world, we are not expected to crawl into a corner and say, okay, when this situation improves, then I'm going to come out and be myself. No, you are who you are for such a time as this, specifically in the midst of a VUCA world, in the midst of COVID-19. God has placed you here for a purpose. And in that purpose, part of that purpose is that you will have harmony and well-being and equanimity. I know that's a bold statement to make. And you're probably saying, wait a minute. I'm not sure about that. Well, God is sure about it because he placed you here. And God wants the very best from you. But let's now look at the question. We're talking about harmony and well-being. How do I know whether I'm navigating this VUCA time well? Well, I'm going to put up a list that will kind of be a litmus test for us of whether we are kind of doing okay or whether we're not doing okay, and whether we need a better tool in our hands to navigate. So if you're navigating fairly well, then these attributes must be part of your life. That you have joy. And I'm not talking about being happy. Happiness is based on circumstance, right? On happenstance. For example, you get up in the morning, you're very happy. You look out the window, the sun is shining, and you're singing to yourself, oh, it's a beautiful morning, oh, it's a beautiful day. And then you walk out and you stub your toe on the foot of your bed and you're in pain, and suddenly you're not happy, right? The sun may be still shining, but you're not singing anymore. Happiness is based on circumstance. Joy is not. Joy is based on how you feel when everything around you in the world is not doing well. You still have a sense of joy. You still have a sense of peace. Our scriptures say that God gives us a kind of peace, not as the world gives it, but a peace that comes from Him. In other words, not that everything around you is going well, but that in spite of everything not going well, you have a sense of being peaceful. Fulfillment. Are you finding fulfillment for the dreams and the visions that you have for yourself? Are they being fulfilled? Or are they on the back burner right now? And you're saying, I'm just waiting for a climate change here. We'll just wait till this terrible VUCA experience linked with COVID goes away, and then I'll start seeing what I need to do. Do you have hope? Hope that these things will pass. Hope for a better place, a better time. Hope that this will, give way to vaccines and health and wholeness for people. Can you visualize that hope? Do you have positive expectations of the things that you are doing, of the circle of people that you move in your company, in your firm, in your business, in your environment? Do you have positive expectations? And then, if you're not doing so well, is life stressful? Are you dissatisfied with the way things are going? Do you find yourself being anxious or uptight? Are you just filled with negativity or depressed? You get up every morning and just kind of lay around there and say, oh, well, I'm just going to stay here. There's no motivation to get up. Do people avoid you because you're so tightly strung together? Or people avoid you because all they get from you is negativity? Is it just a stressful day for you as you look at what's going on? Well, not going to ask for a show of hands here, but it might be pretty evident as we look at these lists where we come down on, isn't it? And so it begs the question, all right, so that's where I am. Okay, I'm not doing so well. How do I do better? What would be something that you can give me that will help me? And that's what I want to give you in the time that we have left. I'm going to give you, and this is not something this is the way to handle a VUCA world. No, there are hundreds of solutions out there that people are talking about. This is just one that I want to present to you that I believe has helped me, and I want to share it with you. So, as we look at navigating, I want to introduce you to a book by Tom Patterson. I don't know how many of you here like picking up books and have a library. And if you're one of them, this is a book for your library. This is a book for you. Tom Patterson's Living the Life You Were Meant to Live. Okay, this is a keeper. In fact, I would advise you, if pick one up, and it leads you through this whole process of how to actually live the kind of life that you were intended to live. Look, you and I are not here by chance, right? We are not. We're being placed here at this time, this geographical place, in this era, with these gifts and talents for making a difference in the world that we are. We have to leave the world a better place, or else we wasted the breath that we have. We have to. And Tom Patterson says, for you to have this sense of well-being and harmony, you need to be touching all of life's domains. And he lists 5 domains that are crucial for you to be impacting, not every day, but making sure that they get touched. Okay, what are those 5 domains? The personal domain. He says, you've got to do something for yourself, not for you and the family, not for you and friends, just for yourself. What is it that you want to do? If you could take a paper and pencil, write down, okay, what would you like to do? Just you. Write that down. That's something that you need to go after. Because if you put down your personal domain and dimension, then it leaves you with dissatisfaction. And you cannot be in a state of homeostasis or equilibrium or harmony. You have to want to do something. But my favorite thing is to crawl into my lazy boy, kick it up, get myself a cold diet Coke, get a book, listen to music, or watch a movie. Those are things I love to do, and I do it just for me. It's not an activity I share with anybody. It's something that I do for me. And Tom Patterson says, you've got to make sure that this personal domain gets hit in your life, or you're going to be a dissatisfied person. Because there will be many things that you want to do for yourself that doesn't get done because you haven't given it the time or given it the priority that it needs. Secondly, he says, the family domain. And in this COVID time, I'm sure there's been an increase of family time, isn't it? Families being together. And yet, whether it is good or bad, the jury is still out on that, isn't it? We're not sure. Because as I mentioned earlier, there's lots of things that's coming out now that has been going on in families. But what Tom Patterson says is that you've got to have a sliver in your life that is devoted to your family, that you do family things. Maybe you sit with the children and play board games. Maybe you go outside and play a game of cricket or hockey or whatever, fly kites. Maybe you and your spouse go out, have a date night, watch a movie together, or go into a mall and have a family activity. But you've got to intentionally spend time with your family. Because if you don't, then again, it's going to leave you feeling guilty. And if you're feeling guilty, then you cannot have a sense of well-being in your life. Are you with me? You tracking with me? All right. The third area, he says, is that your church or your faith life, your spirituality must be an integral part of your life. We are all spiritual people. And God has given you and me different gifts that are meant to be used for the benefit of people around us. And the question is, are we using those gifts? I always think, when this world is over, and heaven is part of my worldview, and so I mention it, and I'm in heaven and I see my little place or wherever I am, and then I go in there and I see my gift that God gave me, and it's still gift trapped. What a sad day that will be, isn't it? Because I can't use it there, because I didn't use it here. And each one of us have been gifted with different personalities, different traits, different giftings to be used in the context of our faith community. And we need to be able to do so. Fourthly, our vocation. We can all agree that this is where most of us spend our time, isn't it? If we were to have a pie chart, this would be 90 to 95% probably. I've been talking to so many people who say that during this COVID time, they're working hours that they never worked before when they went to work, right? Many are working 12, 14 hours a day. And yet we are called to work, isn't it? We are called to work. That's a responsibility that we have. We're not meant to be sluggards here and lazy people and just sit at home. We are meant to work. And that's a component that we need to take seriously. And then he says the last one is your community. He says that we're not an island. We live in community. And therefore, all the things that we have, our education, everything, we must not only utilize it in our vocation, but be able to look around our community and say, how can I use these skills, this experience, this knowledge to better my community? How am I doing for time? Okay. Let me give you an example of this. They say in India, we have close to 13,000 unmanned level crossings. In other words, nobody is there. The train comes, he blows the whistle, and people invariably get killed because some vehicle, some driver thinks that he can always beat the train and never does. And so there are thousands and thousands of accidents that happen at an unmanned level crossing. Two guys from Bangalore, architectural engineers, they said, let's get together and see how we can help this. And so they began to, in their spare time, travel up and down in the trains with the engine drivers, just making notes. 6 months later, they collected data and found out 3 little steps. Just the engine, when it comes close, 300 meters, 600 meters from the level crossing, is expected to blow his horn. They said, blow it again 300 meters. The sound is so loud, it will stop anybody. Second, the speed breaker is parallel to the tracks. Change it and make it oblique. So what happens is that instead of 2 bumps, the vehicle has 4 bumps, which will then alert the driver. Couple of other innovations, and they put it into play, and the number of deaths came down. All because 2 guys said, hey, we're gifted, we have knowledge, we have great experience. We must somehow impact community. And so these are the 5 domains that you need to be hitting every day for you to have a sense of well-being, because that's the way you and I are made. Now, I'm not saying that it has to be 20% each. Sometimes it's going to be 85-1. But you need to make sure that all of them get hit at some point. You probably will take a vacation and then that'll be 100%. But make sure you take the vacation, right? So now these are the 5 life domains that you need to be hitting. Now, I was so excited when I heard that you were the learning group, because you want to learn. And so I'm going to give you something to do that might turn out to be homework for you, but will be so good for you if you actually do it. Here's what I'm suggesting you do. Tom Patterson says that there's a kind of a matrix that you need to look at each of those domains and ask questions, okay? So what you will need to do in your spare time this week is, for example, to take the personal domain. Take a sheet of paper, write down personal on top of it, all right? And then ask the question, what is right about my personal domain? What is right about my personal domain? What's the thing that is going well in that area? Write it down. Second, what is wrong in my personal domain? Write that down. Third, what is confusing in my personal domain? And then fourth, what is missing in my personal domain? Now, when you have written the answers to these questions. He says, look at what is right, and he says, optimize it. Okay? Make sure you're doing more of the right things in your personal domain. Look at what is wrong and then try to change it. Look at what is confused. And then he says, try to bring clarity to that area. Then what is missing? Add it. Okay? Now, you need to do this for all the domains. Ask these 4 questions, answer them, optimize, change, travel, write down how you're going to do that, and then move to the next domain, your family, your church or your faith, your community, and your vocation. Each of these need to be asked this particular question. And then, friends, this is the kind of the last mile. What you put down, now begin to apply it in your life. All the knowledge that you get, if it remains head knowledge, is of no use. Our scriptures say, knowledge by itself only puffs up. True, isn't it? Knowledge that is not applied is of absolutely no use. So bring it into your life. And as you bring it into your life, you will have this sense of well-being. Because here's the kicker. When you are at peace with yourself, when you are in harmony with yourself, within, then you can face the challenges from without. It doesn't matter if it's a VUCA world out there, filled with COVID. You, in harmony with what's going on in your life, will be able to navigate it. I want to close with this illustration. Comes out of Boeing headquarters, has to do with the 777. And if you've flown on the 777, you know that's a marvelous aircraft with all kinds of technical razzmatazz. And David Loney, the guy who was responsible for most of it, says that there was a time when he had a lot of management students come in, and he had a management expert come to address the students. And he said the students were listening to him. At the end of the lecture, the man took a bucket and he placed it on the table. And then he took another bucket filled with stones. And he began to put those stones into this bucket until it was filled to the brim. And then he asked the question, is it full? Everybody said, yes, it is. He said, wrong, it's not. Took another bucket that had gravel and put the gravel where the big stones hadn't gone, filled it up and asked the question, is it full? This time they were a little careful and said, maybe not. He said, you're right. Took another bucket that had sand, poured in the sand, filled it to the top and asked the question, is it full? This time they were on to him. They said, no. He said, yes, you're right. Took a bucket of water, poured it where the big rocks, the gravel and the sand hadn't gone, filled it to the top and asked the question, now, is it full? Everybody in chorus said, it is. He said, you're right. But he said, tell me, what's the point of this illustration? There's always one smart person, isn't it? Who almost speaks before they think. And there was one such kind in this class, put his hand up and said, the point of this illustration is however busy you are, you can always find time for something more. And we may smile at that, and yet sometimes that's the way we live our lives, isn't it? We have trouble saying no, even when there's no more room. The instructor said, no, that's not the reason. Here's the point of the illustration. If you don't get the big rocks in first, you'll never get them in at all. If you don't get the big rocks in first, you'll never get them in at all. I submit to you, for you to navigate a VUCA world, you need to determine what are the big rocks that need to get placed in your life, that needs to have your focus. Because if you don't, if you haven't identified them, if you haven't put them in, then your life will get filled with gravel, sand, and water. Things that cannot negotiate a VUCA world. The big rocks, that's what you need to put into your life as you navigate the VUCA world. Thank you, and God bless you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Cecil. It was a fantastic session, such an inspiration. It's a different angle to look at the VUCA world in spite of troubles, in spite of obstacles, in spite of all this confusion and desperation. Thanks for sharing this inspiration, especially the different angle to look at it. I have taken screenshots of all the slides. I'll be sharing it in the WhatsApp group. This time is for questions. Before that, I would hand over the mic to Sushma. Would you like to talk about this?
Thank you, Jason. And thank you, Dr. Cecile. Awesome presentation. As Jason said, even I have taken so much of notes. A good explanation of VUCA world. When I got this topic first, I asked Jason, what is exactly VUCA? What does exactly VUCA mean? And then I Googled it, as you said, and that's where I understood what exactly it is. But yes, the clarity is what you have given us today. I would look into the book you mentioned, Living the Life You Want to Live by Tom Pattison. So yes, I like to read books, though sometimes it is difficult with office and home, and sometimes I juggle, but yes, I love to read books. We'll definitely have a look at this one. I also like some points which you have mentioned. So one with the Uber example where you said not to have very exclusive platforms. So otherwise, one hit like this will flatten it. This is what you meant, right?
Yes, and that they disrupt, right?
Yes.
You're not expecting it, right? You think that you've got everything handled, and then one small startup somewhere, okay, just grows exponentially, and before you know what's happening, you're not ready for that competition, isn't it? And it takes you by surprise. So
yes, that's what. And I love the examples, the small stories which you shared, that has made it more clear. What exactly does this mean? So I also like the example, the last one which you shared about Boeing. And the learning is, if you don't get the big rocks in first, you don't get it all. Lovely. And the exercise which you have mentioned, that's awesome, I believe, because if we do need to do it very genuinely, I would say, because at times, if we don't want to see the ugly side of it, we don't write that, but that's not what we are looking at. We need to be very genuine so that we know what we lack, we know where we are good at, and where to emphasize and where to add in. That's a great learning. Yes, good exercise, and I'll definitely do it as you have mentioned.
good.
I also liked your point, take vacation, take a break. It's
Yes, so
necessary
important.
sometimes. Yes, yes. And also the concept of 5 life domains, though when what I have learned is the 8 domains, but yes, this the main 5 domains, 5 pillars. Yes, definitely I will do this exercise. I have noted the 4 points which you have asked to look at. Thank you for this session. It was wonderful knowing you and wonderful knowing your story, the session, the VUCA world. Great learning. Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you so much.
The stage is open for questions. If anybody wants to ask any questions specific directly to Dr. Cecil. So Devin sir, can you unmute? I think you're on a mode to ask the questions, I think. So Devin, yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, Doctor, it was a wonderful. VUCA has been, in the air since this COVID affected us, right? But the concept you have given, that was amazing. That was very interesting, actually. Right? This I have never come across. It's a good learning, actually, right? And the examples you have given also was wonderful. It was both listening to this. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Giri sir, any comments from your side?
Thank you, Sushma, and thank you, Jason, and hats off, Mr. Clement. Actually, today the VUCA world, every time it tells that pre-COVID and the post-COVID, so we are improving in so many things. And today the session, every day we are learning, and the learning is equal to earning. Today I missed some of the things, but every day I will be attending some webinars. But today is this is the first webinar I have attended. I am searching so many links. When I cross this energy that I am thinking of Sushma, oh, this is the right time I have to attend. Even though I have to go for my Rotary Club this time, at least something I have to learn today. That there are so many key learning. The two key learning is 5 life domains, and then the 4 helpful matrices. Yeah, definitely each and everything to be that the homework is very nice, and 2 nights I have to sit and work all these things. Clement sir, actually one of my teacher is 7th standard. His name is Clement, and you are also remembering my class teacher, and so knowledgeable my math teacher. But even though I am not good in maths, but my diploma, and then I completed my maths, and even I scored 100 marks like that. So some of the remembrance I am discussing with you. Anyway, thanks to that VUCA world, everything we have to face actually. Earlier, we are facing so many difficulties. Right now, only each and everything we are googling. At least we totally forget our innovative ideas. Now the innovation will be going to rule the world. So your training, that whatever the content you are given is awesome, and there are so many takeaways. These 2 takeaways I can take, and I will work it out. Thank you, Clement sir, and again thank you, Sushma. Even though you are housewife, I really hats off to you spending some time to these people to learn that the corporate social responsibility, each and everyone should have. No, not only that the company or any other corporate, at least individual should also have some corporate responsibility, corporate social responsibility. I see here Sushma and Jason, you are all doing great thing, and keep it up. Bye.
Thank you, Giri sir.
Sir, I'm not from the UAE. I'm from a different laid-back country called Oman. I have a question. Can I ask you, sir?
Please.
Sir, in this complex, uncertain age of VUCA world, how does one make a plan for the future? I am from a sales domain, and since I have to make some plans for sales and for business, what is the best practice in your opinion to make a plan for sales or for any progress in this uncertain, ambiguous world? What is the key points that you would tell us to do that? That is number one. And number two, the same question: what will be our traditional plan in terms of our post-work retirement period? Because in a previous world, when my father and grandfather were there, they had a sort of a savings or a passive income. But now with so much of uncertainty, how does one in this current age think about retirement and post-work life? Thank you.
Okay. Well, um, let me answer the second question first. How do you plan for retirement? I think depending on the number of years you have left, you need to be thinking about where you'll stay. Okay. 2, you need to be thinking about proximity to family. 3, you'll need to be thinking about whether you have the resources to maintain the place that you will stay. And then 4th, whether you can kind of provide a buffer in terms of finances to be able to do the things that you will enjoy in retirement that you couldn't do when you were working. That's in a nutshell and very broadly speaking, I'm giving you. The second, in terms of sales, I cannot give you a specific answer. It would depend and vary entirely on what the product is and all of that. But I would say, take the VUCA world out of the equation. Make your sales plan and then look at it through the eyes of volatility and say, given that anything can erupt at any moment, what change will I need to do in this plan? Then look at it again in terms of an uncertain world and say, I can't predict which kind of opposition will come up. If an opposition comes, I don't know from where, but do I have the wherewithal to weather it? And that would be the way I would advise you, is to first get your sales plan the way you would normally do it, and then look at it through the grid of VUCA and make the changes that you can. That's the best that you can do, given VUCA being VUCA.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Cecil. Thank you, Sam, for asking the question. Any more questions before closing the session? If you have, you can directly ask to Dr. Cecil now. Any more questions? If not, Sushma, would you like to speak anything?
I have shared my views and it was really great.
Okay, so before ending the session, virtual bouquet for Dr. Clemens. We cannot directly come and give to you this, but thank you for joining the show. Thank you for, in fact, I would like to thank Susan at this time, maybe to Dr. Cecil, because Susan was responsible for coordinating all the things. Design posting.
Most welcome, Jason. Most welcome. It's a delight to have Dr. Cecil.
Thank you so much.
So I know how how valuable it is. Anytime.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Cecil. Thank you.
My pleasure, Susan, always.
The full recorded video would be shared in the YouTube link. I will be sharing soon. Before closing the session, I would like to share the details of the next speaker. So she is very familiar to us, Ms. Sushma Priju. And again, we would be having a great session next Thursday, 6 o'clock, same time. You would be meeting her and we will have a discussion on a very interesting subject. Sushma, we would be waiting to hear from you more. So thank you again for everybody for joining the show from 6 to 7 every Thursday. And hope we meet again soon. And thank you so much. Before winding up the show, thanks a lot, Dr. Cecil, for joining in from Mumbai. Thank you. Have a great day. Good evening.
Yes, thank you. Thank you all. We all are here because you all are here. Thank you for being with us. Thank you, Dr. Cecile, once again.
Most welcome, and thank you for having me. Many blessings.
Thank you.